The hidden tree collard that never reached the grocery store. The plant that breaks every rule. There is a vegetable that grows for years instead of months. A vegetable that becomes taller than a person. A vegetable that can be harvested again and again and again without replanting. It produces fresh food day after day through seasons that wipe out ordinary crops, and yet it never shows up in grocery stores. It does not sit in neat bundles under bright supermarket lights. It does not ride refrigerated trucks across thousands of miles. It does not appear on seed racks with shiny packets and fancy branding. It lives somewhere else, in back corners of yards, behind fences, along side paths where only a few people notice it, in gardens where someone quietly says, "Take a cutting, it will feed you." This plant is called the tree collard, and once its story is understood, the real question changes. It is no longer, "Why is this plant so rare?" It becomes, "Why did we ever accept a food system that cannot make room for something this resilient?" Meeting the tree collard. A tree collard does not behave like a vegetable. Vegetables are supposed to be short-lived, soft-stemmed, temporary. They rise, they produce, then they disappear. Tree collard does not disappear. A single plant rises from the soil with the confidence of something permanent. Its stem is not tender. It becomes woody. It thickens. It gathers scars from harvest after harvest, each cut marking the passage of time. Over years, it forms a trunk, not a stalk. A trunk, the kind of trunk that makes people stop and stare the first time they see it. Thick, rough, sometimes wide enough to grip with two hands. It supports branches that climb and spread, each one crowned with broad leaves. The leaves are not small. They can be as large as a dinner plate, waxy, dense, layered like a living canopy. In mild climates, the plant keeps its leaves year-round. No dramatic dieback, no empty seasons where the garden goes quiet. The tree collard stays awake. In winter, its colors deepen. Cold can pull purple and smoky violet from the leaves, the pigments rising as the plant adapts. And beneath the surface, something else is happening. A deep taproot drives downward into the soil. It reaches where shallow annual crops cannot. It anchors the plant against wind. It pulls minerals from deeper layers, turning hidden resources into edible green. This is not just a vegetable, and it is a fixture, a living food bank, a steady producer that grows stronger with time, a harvest that doesn't end. Most vegetables are built on a cycle: plant, wait, harvest, start over. Tree collard breaks that cycle. Once it is established, it becomes a routine of steady abundance. A few leaves taken today, a few more next week, more next month. No pause, no reset. Gardeners who grow it describe it the same way, even in different places and different climates. It's always there. A mature tree collard can yield pounds of leaves each month during its prime years. Not a single burst of harvest, then silence. A steady output that stretches across the calendar. If a plant produces 2 to 4 pounds per month in good conditions, that becomes 20 to 40 pounds in a season. And when the plant holds that productivity year after year, the numbers turn unusual. Over a decade, it can quietly reach hundreds of pounds of edible greens from a single plant. That kind of yield makes annual gardening look inefficient, not because annual crops are useless, because they are fragile by design. Tree collard offers something different: a long-running ledger of food, a crop that accumulates value over time instead of resetting every spring. The secret that keeps it out of commerce. Here's the part that explains almost everything. Tree collard almost never sets seed. Not rarely, not occasionally, often, not at all. In many mild coastal climates, growers can keep these plants for years without seeing a single flower. When flowers do appear, they are unpredictable, brief, sometimes malformed. Even when seed pods form, the seeds can be few. And worse, the offspring are often not true to type. A seedling might revert into something ordinary, short-lived, different leaf shape, different growth habit, no towering trunk, no reliable perennial behavior. This makes tree collard something unusual in modern agriculture. A plant that resists being packaged. Seed companies cannot easily sell it because there is no dependable seed. And without dependable seed, there is no predictable product. The plant's biology forces a different system. It reproduces by hand. A branch is snapped off, stripped of most leaves, pressed into soil, kept moist long enough to root, and the cutting becomes a clone of the parent. Exact, reliable, the same plant repeated. This is how tree collards survive. Not through catalogs, not through commercial racks, through people, through neighbors, through sharing. A food chain built on trust. There are crops that spread through markets, through money, through advertising. Tree collard spreads through relationships. Someone grows it, someone visits, someone asks what it is. A conversation happens. The answer is never complicated. It's tree collard. It keeps going. You want a cutting? Then a branch changes hands. Wrapped in damp cloth, tucked into a bag, carried home, planted quietly, and now the chain continues. This is why tree collard feels invisible to the modern world. Because modern systems measure value through transactions, tree collard thrives through gifts. It is hard to monetize a plant that can multiply endlessly once one person has it. That fact alone explains why it never became mainstream in a world built around repeat purchases, a history written in cuttings, not books. Tree-like brassicas have existed for a long time. In the British Isles, perennial kales and tree kales were kept as living larders, cut back repeatedly, never uprooted, surviving coastal wind and rough weather where annual greens struggled. Old garden writings describe hardy kale bushes standing through winter, feeding families when other crops failed. In parts of the Mediterranean, multi-year collard-like plants lived on terraces and stone-walled plots, valued for drought tolerance and survival. In the Balkans, families maintained perennial brassicas by breaking off pieces and rooting them in spring rains. These plants did not travel as seed packets. They traveled as living fragments, because that was the only way. Cuttings moved with migrants, with sailors, with families relocating for work or survival. A piece of a plant can cross an ocean in damp cloth. A seed can too, but a cutting carries certainty. It carries a guarantee. This will be the same plant that fed us. Why it outperforms kale in the real world. Kale is famous now. It is marketed, packaged, sold as a modern health food. Tree collard rarely gets that spotlight. Yet among gardeners who grow both, the comparison becomes simple. Tree collard is milder, sweeter, less bitter. Its leaves are tender, and that tenderness is part of the reason it cannot be commercialized easily. Tender leaves wilt fast. They do not tolerate long storage. They do not like shipping. They do not sit proudly for days on shelves. They are designed for something else. Immediate food, a kitchen garden crop, a cut-and-cook plant, the kind of food that makes sense when you harvest it near the moment you eat it. Tree collard is not optimized for the supermarket. It is optimized for a home. Nutrition that doesn't need a trend. Collard greens are already among the most nutrient-dense vegetables commonly measured. They provide high levels of vitamins A, C, and K. They offer minerals such as calcium and magnesium. They provide meaningful protein for a leafy vegetable. Tree collard belongs to this world of nutrition, but with advantages. Its deep perennial root system reaches minerals annual greens never touch. Over time, it builds a stronger relationship with the soil. Many tree collard strains also develop purple pigments in cooler weather, and those pigments often indicate anthocyanins, compounds associated with antioxidant benefits. Even without chasing lab numbers, the pattern remains. Tree collard is not just abundant, it is dense. It gives a steady stream of nutrition, not a seasonal burst. Why industrial agriculture couldn't use it? Modern agriculture depends on predictable systems. Uniform crops, uniform spacing, uniform harvest. Machines want straight rows and identical growth. Tree collard refuses. It branches, it leans, it stretches upward and outward. Each plant takes on its own shape. That is beautiful in a garden. That is inconvenient in industrial fields. Harvesting is another problem. Many commercial greens are bred to survive shipping. Thicker leaves, tougher texture, long shelf life. Tree collard leaves are tender. They wilt quickly after picking. That quality makes them perfect for home eating. It makes them risky for long-distance distribution. Then there is the biggest obstacle of all, seed economics. Industrial food systems rely on recurring purchases. Seeds represent repeat business. Tree collard does not offer repeat business. One cutting can create dozens. Those dozens can create hundreds. No patent can easily capture a plant that refuses consistent seed production and thrives through cloning and sharing. In the logic of large-scale commerce, abundance without ongoing revenue is an endpoint, so the plant remains outside the system, not because it lacks value, because it cannot be controlled in the usual way. The plant built for hard times. Tree collard has another trait that makes it feel almost unreal. It survives. During drought, its deep root system reaches below the thirsty surface layer. Annual greens collapse in heat. Tree collard holds. During cold, its waxy leaves and woody trunk resist damage. In many Zone 8 gardens, it survives frost that wipes out lettuce and spinach. It may lose some tender tips in harsh cold, but it regrows. It returns. It has energy stored in its structure, stored in roots, trunk, and branches. This is a plant built for instability. When weather becomes unpredictable, that matters more than ever. Propagation that feels like a secret. Tree collard propagation is simple, and that simplicity is part of its power. A branch is taken from an established plant. Lower leaves are removed. The cutting is placed into soil. Weeks later, later, roots form. A new plant begins. No seed packet. No timing the perfect germination window. No fear that a cold snap will erase seedlings overnight. A single branch can become a new food source for another household. That is why gardeners call it a quiet revolution, because it does not demand constant restarting. It demands remembering why we forgot it. The world shifted toward convenience. Food became something purchased rather than grown. Gardens became decorative rather than essential. Seed companies and retailers shaped what people believed existed. If it wasn't in stores, it felt rare. If it wasn't in catalogs, it felt non-existent. Tree-collard never fit that pipeline, so it disappeared from mainstream awareness. It survived where it always survives, in the hands of people who grow food for resilience, not for trends. The real meaning of food security. Food security is often framed as logistics, warehouses, supply chains, transport routes. Tree-collard offers a different definition. Food security that stands in your yard. A plant that continues producing even when seeds are unavailable, prices rise, or supply lines break. It does not require annual repurchasing. It does not demand perfect timing. Once established, it becomes a living guarantee. And that idea is uncomfortable for systems built on scarcity and repeat transactions. The return of a forgotten crop. Right now, climate instability is reshaping gardens and farms. Heat arrives early. Cold snaps return late. Rain becomes unpredictable. Water restrictions spread. In that world, perennial food sources stop being interesting curiosities. They become practical. A plant that can grow for 10, 15, even 20 years is not just a garden feature. It is long-term planning. It is nourishment that does not ask permission every spring. The questions that remain. If a plant can produce for years, why isn't it everywhere? If it can outlast harsh seasons, why do most people never hear about it? If it can multiply endlessly by cuttings, why do seed racks stay silent? The answer is not that it failed. The answer is that it never entered the system that decides what counts. Tree-collard does not thrive in commerce. It thrives in community. That is its strength, and that is why it stayed hidden. A future that begins with one cutting. A single cutting is enough to begin. Not enough to start a farm overnight, enough to start a different relationship with food. A relationship where the garden gives back year after year. Where the plant becomes a fixture. Where harvest becomes routine. A living food bank that grows taller over time. And perhaps, in a world obsessed with new inventions, the most important step is remembering what was already here. If this story introduced you to something you never expected, a vegetable that feeds you for years, share it with someone who grows food, someone who cares about resilience, or someone who has never heard of tree-collards. If you found this valuable, like and share the video so it reaches more people who need practical knowledge. And if you want more stories uncovering hidden crops, forgotten methods, and solutions that survive outside the mainstream, subscribe and stay with us. Because sometimes the future of abundance starts with one cutting, passed quietly from hand to hand.